leveraging the data. It is about numbers because HR is about business, and business in a way is also about numbers.
Welcome to the podcast, Saleha. Thank you so much for saying yes to having this conversation with me.
Thank you, Anna. It's a pleasure. Thank you so much for inviting me.
I'm very curious to learn so much about you and your insights, your perspective. If you can share with us a bit about who you are, the industry that you're in, for how many years, and also if you want to share something unexpected that people usually don't guess about you.
Okay, so I'll start by sharing a little bit about me, who I am. So yes, I am a certified HR practitioner. I have spent 14 years in the corporate world in HR across the GCC region. Some of the countries that I worked in are Qatar, that's where I was born and raised. Yemen, I lived there for over a year and I worked there as well. And of course, here in the UAE. And in addition to that, for the last 4 to 5 years, I am also an entrepreneur. So yeah, I decided 5 years ago, I decided to not pursue my corporate career further and instead take a shift to becoming an entrepreneur. It's been an excellent journey. Yeah, it's been a rewarding and a challenging journey, but yeah, lots to learn from it. Something unexpected. What people don't guess about me is, I don't know, what is that? I don't know, maybe I would like to share something which is really funny. I know the people who know me are going to be like, what? I've recently started playing piano.
Wow, that's so
Yeah,
nice.
I have for the last 3 to 4 months. I'm learning, and I can play a few songs. So maybe very soon I'm gonna probably upload a little video about myself playing piano. I know it's
Wow, that's
completely
so
out of
nice.
HR, but yeah.
Yeah, I have like a piano in the back of my husband was trying to learn. Um, and then like for me, I dabbled a bit on it, but didn't take it seriously. So that would be fun to do it and to share notes
Yeah,
on how to best do it. That would be
it
really
will
cool.
be. I would love to do that sometime with you.
A duet, perhaps our next video. Stay tuned.
Okay.
Oh, cool. Um, I decided when I've created the podcast, especially on the website, I was like, how can I make this really interesting? And the idea came to mind, what if I create specific playlists with people where my guests are introverts, some of them are extroverts, and some of them are ambiverts, because I'm very curious about this type of subjects and to see how people are thinking and behaving and how they learn best. So my question to you would be, how do you see yourself? How do you recharge yourself, either by yourself, reading books, or perhaps in groups of other people, or you see yourself more as a combination of both?
Yeah, it's a very interesting question because and it took me some time to realize who I actually was, whether I'm an extrovert or an introvert, because I didn't hear of something in the middle before. I don't think it was so popular some time ago. Like ambiverts were not so popular. But I am an ambivert. I like to meet people. I like to mingle with people. I like to go out, and I do recharge. I unwind there as well. So when I meet people, when I speak to them, when I share with them, I laugh. That's a great way for me to unwind. But I can't do too much of that. I mean, I'm not somebody who can stay out every day, or do like three or four gatherings in a day. I know some people can just stay out whole day, but I can't do that. I need a little bit of both. I need to be home. I need to be on my couch sometimes. Not so much a TV person though. Not a book person as well. But I read articles, I read blogs. Yeah, so that sort of a thing. So I'm mostly sitting with my phone reading stuff over, uh, you know, uh, like for example, Forbes, Inc.com, news. These are some of uh, the stuff that I follow. Lean in, elevate, yeah, all that sort of things.
Yeah,
So,
beautiful. Great.
yeah.
Thank you so much for sharing that with us. So on today's episode, we're discussing a bit about HR, human resources, a bit of recruitment and your background. And so I'm going to start off with the questions. And my first one would be, what's something that you wished you knew when you first started this career?
Okay, so yeah, so like you said, I'm going to be talking more about the HR and the recruitment world that I started off my career with. And what's something that I knew when I started was you can't please everyone. Stop trying to please everybody. And especially in HR or in even in recruitment, it is glamorous, the HR and recruitment as well. And I love the topic of your podcast because I think a lot of people from outside see it as a very authoritative position. Oh, you're somebody who puts people into jobs. Oh, you sit in HR, so you kind of get to rule over people. I've got so many of these things as well. So yeah, I really wish I knew that it is, don't don't try to please everyone. There will be all sorts of feedbacks and situations that you will have. Yeah.
That's very interesting. Because for most of us, definitely that's a nature, people pleasing. I'm still
Yeah.
recovering from that.
I
So
know.
I can get the way. That would be really useful to know in the beginning of the career. Looking back at some of the setbacks that you had in the beginning, I'm imagining you had a few of them. If that was your case, how have you dealt with them and what kept you going?
Hmm. It's funny because until I actually did this reflective exercise for your podcast when you invited me, I really thought that I didn't really have any major setbacks in my corporate career because I know we shouldn't compare ourselves to others but when I did compare in the past myself to some of my peers, I felt that I had a very smooth journey in my corporate world. So I started off very easily, and I grew my corporate ladder as well very gracefully, I would say. But when I did this reflective exercise, I realized that I did have setbacks, I did have challenges, and I think what one thing that really sort of made me go forward was I just kept going. I think I just kept going, just learning from what has been happening, how can I improvise, and just learning from everyone, just coming back stronger. I kind of never had failure as an option, and I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, but I did have horrible fear of failure. I Failure was like next to death for me. So failing was not an option. I just had thing that no, I have to keep going, I have to just keep pushing forward, even. And that's how I was brought up like that. And not that I choose that parenting style myself. But yeah, but that's just how I was brought up, and I kept coming back stronger and kept going.
Hmm, that's a great point, and I feel the same. At some points, I have, um, yeah, failure was not an option for me either. It was just like I had. And to be honest, for me, it wasn't that conscious, like a decision, or maybe for you was conscious, I don't know. But for me, it was in the back of my mind, was like, I'm just gonna move forward. I'm gonna find a way. I'm gonna be resilient, even though this wasn't the language I was using back then, but that was the subtitle.
Absolutely, exactly what you said. I don't think I was conscious as well. Now that I realize, now that when I reflect, I feel it was conscious. And I was just interviewed a few days ago at one of the platforms, and I mentioned there that resilience is something that I wasn't uh, I wasn't resilient in the past. That's what I mentioned in the podcast. I said that I learned this over, in my entrepreneurial journey. But now when I did this exercise, I realized I was resilient. It's just that I wasn't conscious about it because this is resilience.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm curious if we are to, because most of the audience for this podcast is people in their 20s or people that are looking to change their careers. So I'm wondering if we are to spread that message that in the end of the day, we are all resilient. Maybe we're just not as aware of that. And bring the conversation saying, hey, even though this looks challenging, you'll find a way. Just having that belief. And like with my previous guest, we were talking about sometimes in the beginning of the careers when we don't have those people around us to have that belief in us, even when we don't have it for ourselves or when we don't think we can do that, but they have that belief in us. It's like borrowing their beliefs in ourselves so then we can move forward.
True. I love that.
Yeah. So, yeah, you are resilient. You'll figure it out. You'll find a way.
Yeah.
Like affirmation style.
Yes. Thank you.
What's one piece of advice you received when you were a junior in this career?
Oh, so okay, that's because to be very honest, I don't remember an advice that I received, and that's a very honest confession. Not that I haven't received any good advices. I'm sure I have, but nothing has really stuck with me. But what I would like to say is I've had some really good leaders as well. And I think rather than, learning from their advices, I've learned from their actions. So when I started, I was in the initial stages of my recruitment career, and I was working for an agency in recruitment. And when I came into the job, I thought, okay, so I'm doing recruitment, so I need to know everything about hiring people and everything about the job description. And really, I need to be a person who's really focused on just hiring people. And that was really in the initial stages of my career. But the boss that I had, the leader whom I had, he was like, you need to know more where you're putting these people. You need to know more about the business. So he actually arranged a trip for me. So I was recruiting for an offshore project. It was technical recruitment, and I was recruiting for Maersk Oil and companies like Occidental for their offshore projects. So he's like, you need to go offshore, and you need to see where you are actually putting these people. It was really exciting. I don't think I would have come up with that idea of really understanding the whole business side of things until he actually put that into me. And that was really in very initial stages of my career. So I actually went offshore. I went on a chopper, and before you go offshore, yeah, it was very exciting. Before you go offshore, you have to take certain trainings, like you have to do what's called H2S training, where you need to know how to use the breathing apparatus just in case there is a disaster and that sort of thing. So I did all of that, and also basic first aid training. And I went offshore and I stayed there for one whole day. I actually,
Wow.
understood how this whole business thing works, how the offshore platform works, why do they exist, where am I putting these people, what are these people actually doing. So really, like, working closely with them, understanding them so that we can best serve their interest. So that's something really, from the HR perspective, really, that I learned from, that it's not just, when you're an HR person, you're not just somebody who is pushing files and papers across. You're not just doing hiring and firing. You're not an admin person. You need to know about the business, and that's the only way you can actually serve the business. So it's a very strategic role, regardless of which area of HR you are in.
That's very interesting. And it's great to have this perspective because, especially when you are in the beginning of the career, knowing what's ahead of you and how you can best learn and maximize your activity and like what you to focus on. That's great insight to have in the beginning.
Yes, yes.
Because then you can focus on what's really important and finding the right even the right companies to work for, right? Because like in the
Absolutely.
beginning, when if it's a how to say it, if it's not a company that has the best practices in the market, you're gonna start your career learning what not to do correctly or how not to do it in the
Absolutely.
with
Absolutely.
integrity, having high values on perhaps respect and fairness and all of these things. So it's really important.
Absolutely, Anna. I so agree with that.
Another question that I have, which wasn't in the ones that I shared with you, it's like my question.
Okay.
And I've learned, I gained so much insight from my previous guests, and I just want to have your take on that. If we are to look at the scale of 1 to 10, 1 you were bad at it, 10 you were amazing at it, how good were you at asking for help in your 20s?
Okay. Oh, I think that was really an area which I was suffering at. Um, I don't know. Somehow asking for help was again not really an option to me. It never even struck me that you can actually ask for help.
Wow.
I was so, and it's not just about asking for help, asking for anything. Even if I have to ask a question, I used to come across so apologetic, as if I am literally like taking something away from somebody. So yeah, that was really an area that I was really not good at. I didn't ask for enough help. I didn't have a mentor. I never had a mentor. Until I actually until the last few years, until the last 2 or 3 years. And that's why I'm saying that cannot even remember a good advice that stuck with me, because I was a very private person, so I would never open up in a conversation with anybody. And it's funny because I said that I'm an ambivert. I was an ambivert, I'm sure, at that point as well, not consciously though. But I never asked for enough help, and that's really an area which I would, just like you said, I would really advise people to be open to ask for help, because there are people who have done this before us. There are people who know much more than us, and it doesn't take away anything from anybody. Sometimes it doesn't take away anything from anyone. Sometimes maybe just a little bit of advice, and people are there willing to offer help. So yeah, so I so to answer your question, I think it was a scale of 1 to 10, and if 10 is the worst, was 10 the worst?
10 was the
Or one?
best. You
Oh,
were
sorry, 10
amazing
was
at
the best.
asking for help.
Oh no, one of the worst. I was probably one.
Oh, and how have you or where have you moved? Because I'm imagining you've, as you shared, you've moved on the scale. Where are you now?
I think I'm at 9 now.
Beautiful.
Yes, I am. And this is something really I've learned through my entrepreneurial journey. When I started off as a business owner, I still struggle to ask for help. But now, in lately, I have given up those beliefs, and I do ask for help. I have a coach, I have a mentor, and I reached out to people. I try to leverage my network that I have. Yeah, so I think I'm doing great at that now.
Yeah, that's really amazing. It is a journey to get to that point, and in the beginning, especially when we're so young and we're still finding our way, finding our voice, getting clear on what's important to us, we get so much advice sometimes, and now with the internet, who do you listen to, right? It's like so confusing at times. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, true.
What are some misconceptions about the HR industry, if you'd like to share that with us?
Yeah, loads of misconceptions. And just like I mentioned earlier as well, so HR, because decades ago, HR was more an admin role, or really a role where people used to maintain personnel files and records, and just do hiring and firing, that sort of a thing. So it's, unfortunately, in a way, it's still very much seen that way. One of the other misconceptions, when it is not actually, like I said earlier, it's not actually a role which just sits with files and hires and fires people. It is a very strategic role, regardless of which area of HR you are in, because you are serving the interest of an organization, and you are dealing with the most valuable asset of the organization, which is people. So it's a very important, and HR professionals tend to wear so many different hats in an organization. So that's a huge misconception. I've also heard things like, I wasn't good at numbers, I suck with data and that sort of a thing. So, and that's how I landed in HR. I didn't know what to do when I landed in HR. Well, that's not true, because yes, HR. Yes, HR is a people-oriented role. You need to be passionate about serving people, helping people, that sort of a thing. But it's also about leveraging the data. It is about numbers, because HR is about business, and business in a way is also about numbers. So you can be someone who hates numbers, who doesn't like data, because you have to leverage all of this. So that's a huge misconception about HR, which I quite often hear of. And even now, I've had interns before who were just fresh out of university, and when I asked them why, because they were graduated with HR as a major, I'm like, why did you choose HR? They're like, oh, I wasn't sure what I should be doing, so I chose HR because it seemed easy to get into. And I've also heard this, and finance was just not an option for me, so I HR is great, HR work seems great. So, but that's not really the case. Yeah.
Very interesting. And what advice would you give somebody curious about this industry, and maybe now they're at the stage where they want to make a decision whether to pursue or not the HR industry?
What advice would I like to give? Yeah, I think the main advice that I would like to give to somebody is find out what your strengths are. Before, and it's not just about HR industry. To be honest, this is very general as well. Find out what your strengths and your values are before you walk into anything, and even before you choose an organization to work with. And if we talk about HR, HR is very much a role that, as HR professionals, you're very much also like a brand ambassador for the organization, because you're constantly selling the organization. If you're recruiting, you are selling the job, you're selling your company to the candidates. Regardless of, if you are in L&D, you do like onboarding professionals. When a new candidate, when a new employee comes on board, you are in a position where you're promoting the organization, giving them all the good bits and how this environment is great for them. So you're constantly selling, and you don't want to be in a position where you're not aligned with the values of the organization, because how would you actually sell them or put them forward, or be a brand ambassador for that organization when you're not aligned with the values? So yeah, find out what your strengths and values are. Look for an organization that's in line with your values. Always be curious, ask questions, keep an open mindset. Ask, be inquisitive, ask questions, know the industry, learn about the industry. It is so important. I can't stress that enough. I often see HR, especially junior HR professionals, just stuck in files and day-to-day routine, and not being able to see the bigger picture. But I think that is so important. You need to know what's happening with the business, on the business, to be able to serve that. Yeah, that's the advice.
And it's a great perspective to, because imagine you're like in your 20s and you come with this curiosity to learn everything about the business and to support it, not just from a routine, as you said, but having that discussion perhaps with the managers, with the financial, like finding key people in different departments of the companies to understand and to have definitely that bigger picture. As when somebody new comes, you are excited because you know the people in the business, and then it's like, of course, if it's a match with their values, the company's values, why not having
Yeah,
that introduction?
absolutely.
Cool. Um, what's something that you want to share with the audience that I haven't asked you yet?
Hmm. I can't think of anything that you haven't asked me.
Maybe I
I
missed
think
something. I don't know.
I think you've been very good in asking me most of the stuff. And I really think that you've covered most of the. I think what I would like to share, if is maybe, maybe a little bit more advice, just not just for HR professionals, but again in also for HR professional, but in general all the working professionals, is that don't give yourself too much to the organization that you're working for. And by this I don't mean that don't be loyal or don't be good enough and things like that. What I mean is that yes, be committed, be dedicated, but always have a space for yourself in where you are investing in your own personal development and really building yourself up. Because let's just take example of what happened now with the whole pandemic thing. A lot of people have lost their jobs, and and so many of these people have never even thought of the idea of, say for example, building their network or connecting with people or that sort of a thing. And there was so much, they gave themselves so much to the organization, and now that they're out of the jobs, they really feel that they're lost. They have no life outside that workplace. So I would say, yeah, always have that space for yourself, where you're investing in your own personal development, upskilling yourself, creating your network, building your network, and that sort of a thing, because it's really going to help you going forward.
Yeah, definitely. It's very useful to set aside a few hours per week, I would say, where you can get curious what's of interest and following your interests, following your strengths to right, because we are in this point and there's so many resources online. That's the beauty of the internet nowadays. You have YouTube, you have podcasts, you have books, ebooks, like you name it, it's out there.
Yeah.
And keeping that mindset of constantly growing and evolving gives you more options if things like this happen. What's next for you in this coming year?
Yeah, so I've launched a new business last year, which is the CoachLink, which is an online platform that helps you connect to a certified coach in the UAE. And this is a very exciting venture for me. I am at the moment really focusing on this one, and going forward, I'm going to be focused on this one, at least for this year. It's like having a new baby where where it needs so much of your attention, so that sort of a thing. So yeah, it's a very exciting journey for me, and that's where I'm going to be focusing.
Beautiful. And how can people get in touch with you?
I am on LinkedIn, and I think I'm fairly active on LinkedIn. Well, I am very active on LinkedIn, in terms of I've spent at least some time on LinkedIn every day. So yeah, people can reach out to me on LinkedIn. I'm more than open to connect with like-minded professionals. So yeah, please feel free to reach out. And I'm with
Beautiful.
my name Saleha Surti on LinkedIn as well.
We will share the your links in the show notes for our audience to have it easy for like click and it's there. Beautiful.
Thank you, Anna.
Thank you. Well, I really appreciate your time. It was really insightful conversation, and wishing you the best with the Coach Link. I'm sure you'll make it a successful business.
Thank you so much, Anna. Thank you so much for inviting me. It was really nice sort of sharing all this with you. And like I said, I never it gave me an opportunity to do this reflective exercise on reflecting, on this whole career journey that I've had. When I when all what I think about nowadays is the last 5 years, which is my entrepreneurial journey. So thank you so much for this invite and for having me here. It's been a
Thank
pleasure.
you.
Thank you.